So that second half of that gospel where the guy is talking about his son and Jesus is yelling at people, that part's optional this week in the lectionary. And I will admit to you that I like short readings, and so, and this is being filmed, I shouldn't even admit anything. Short readings. So, being the occasionally responsible priest that I can be, I didn't even read the second half. I just decided right off the bat I wasn't going to be using that second half because it was longer. So that's a nice surprise as a preacher, to be listening to the gospel and hear the whole thing. So, but it's talking about the transfiguration today, everybody. I'm sorry I don't have something for you about Jesus. That's a good next time. So one of the things that I've had the real honor and privilege of doing as a young person raised up in the Diocese of Rhode Island is that I've taken several trips to the Taizé community in France. And it's a monastic community, and the monks, there's over 100 of them that live in this community. They invite young people from all over the world to come and spend time with them. Anybody of any age can come, but the focus of their ministry is really for people between the ages of 18 and 30. And so several times in my late teens and early 20s, I had the opportunity to go and spend a week there with those brothers. They have prayer, beautiful prayer, 3 times a day with chants that you may have heard before. Ubi Caritas, Jesus Remember Me. These beautiful, beautiful meditative chants that are sung in all of these languages. And they're meant to, when I heard one of the brothers describe them, they said they're meant to be like breath. And the sound that is created in their worship space with what can be as many as 6,000 or 7,000 people at a time, because in the summer months they host up to 7,000 people every week, is truly one of the most beautiful sounds I've ever heard. You do all kinds of other things while you live there for a week, but the worship has for me been the part that I've really taken away with me. So at the end of every week that they have on Friday, they have an opportunity where they have this kind of, they have a Taizé cross that they always have hanging in the service. And on Friday nights at the end of the week, they take the cross down and they lay it in the middle of the church, of the worship space. And they put it on kneelers. And what they do is they invite everyone in the community to come forward. It takes a while. And they're invited to lay their forehead on the cross and offer a prayer with their forehead on the cross. And the first time I went to Taizé, that was just outside of my comfort zone. Or maybe I thought it was going to take too long to get to the cross. Whatever. There was a reason. I just was like, that's not for me. But the second time I went, I really felt compelled to go up and see what that experience was like. And so I waited. And you wait, because when thousands of people are moving to have an experience like that, it takes some time, and those songs just keep playing, and finally it was my turn, and I got to I'm surrounded by other people who were also putting their forehead on the cross, and I got there and I put my forehead on the cross and had one of the most profound experiences of Jesus Christ that I have ever had. And I've had a lot of profound experiences of God in my life. But I will be honest with you that I have wrestled with profound experiences with Jesus Christ. I tell you that as a Christian priest. But, that story, like that, there's a lot to that story. And so, as a thinking person, I've had moments of just confusion and like listening to a gospel like we just heard. That second half, I've had a lot of questions about that in my life that obviously I have reconciled in order to be here preaching this gospel. But that moment when I put my head on that cross, there aren't words to tell you about what I experienced, but I was so sure that I was in the presence of Jesus Christ in that moment. And it is one of the most profound spiritual experiences I have ever had. So a few years later, I got married. And my husband and I, like any newlywed couple would want to do, went on another diocesan trip to Taizé together right after we got married. Don't do that. Okay? There are all kinds of things didn't go quite right on that trip. It was freezing cold. There was a lot of rain. I was newly married. It was just like a weird time to be sleeping in, in different quarters. Anyway, it was bizarre. But when Friday night came around, it was really important to me that I share this experience with my husband of putting my head on the cross. And I really wanted him to have this experience as well. And so we got kind of in the queue, and we were waiting with everybody else, and we were singing the songs. And right off the bat, things were not good. There were like these 3 girls sitting behind us. I think they thought they were making really beautiful music, but they were not. It was like cats shrieking. And God bless them, because they were raising their voice in song and worship to the Lord. But I was sitting just kind of dying on the inside, listening to them scream in my ear, and I'm trying to pray, and there's no praying happening. I'm like, please stop singing, please stop singing, please stop singing. So that happened the whole way. It took us until about the time we got to the cross for them to shift to a different part of the crowd and not be singing right behind me. And so I wasn't in the most spiritual zone I'd ever been in when I approached the cross. And I finally got my time. I was like, okay, here we go, Jesus, let's go. I got my time. I put my head down on the cross, and at the same time that I put my head down on the cross, somebody else who was trying to approach the cross right next to me had a kind of awkward moment, and he hit the cross, maybe with his knee. The cross hit me in the head. I was like, Jesus just hit me. I've been waiting for years to have this experience again, and I'm like, Jesus hit me in the head. It just wasn't it, It wasn't good. And we got out of there, and I was like, oh, it's terrible. And it's not like you get the chance to do that every day, and I so wanted to have this experience. And I looked at my husband, and he had a really profound experience, because he had been on the other side of the cross. He was a few feet from where I was. And when the person who had hit the cross on my side hit me in the head with the cross, the experience my husband had was that the cross was alive. Wow. Because he just felt this gentle vibration because it had been hit. Yeah. So it was so interesting that he was able to walk away with an experience that for him was in fact quite profound. But I had been unable to replicate the experience. So I was thinking about that because when I think about this, I love the transfiguration. The part that comes right after it is a little hairy, but the story of the disciples coming up with Jesus and having this incredible experience of Elijah and Moses standing there. And if you don't know a lot about the Bible, Moses and Elijah had been dead for some time, so it was a big deal that they were there with Jesus. This was not an everyday occurrence here either. And their first response, the first thing that Peter says when Jesus is standing there aglow and God's voice is speaking and Moses and Elijah are there is, oh, let me build you a few huts so we can just hang out here. Let me build you a dwelling place. It will be good for us to stay here. And I just think that's the most human thing, right? We have a profound spiritual awakening. We have an incredible moment with God. And it's so magnificent to us that the thing we want to do the most is figure out a way to capture it and replicate it, And that was certainly what I was doing with that experience with the cross. I wanted to be able to have that same experience again. And the thing that happens in our lives is that we have these moments with God, and they can never be replicated exactly the same way as they were then. And instead, we have other work to do after we have those moments. In the 12 steps, I always think, when I think about this moment of spiritual awakening we had, what always kind of comes to me when I think about the transfiguration isn't even that moment on the mountaintop as much as it is what happens after. They have to go back down the mountain. They do here. We hear about this challenging story. They go back down the mountain. What happens after you have the spiritual awakening? And the steps, it's interesting. The steps talk about having a spiritual awakening, right? But you'll notice that none of the steps specifically outlines when the spiritual awakening takes place. That part is not dictated. Wouldn't it be so lovely if you could schedule that kind of thing? Oh, and I'm going to have a spiritual awakening Thursday at 10 a.m. I've done all the allocated steps. The spiritual awakening is going to happen. But when I was thinking about this reading, I kept thinking about the last two steps in particular, because what this is about is after you have an experience like James and John and Peter had on the mountaintop, there's work to be done. You continue to do work. So the 11th step says, we've sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, right? So you don't have a spiritual awakening and then forget about it. Or you don't have a spiritual awakening and expect that to be enough to carry you through with your relationship with God for the rest of your life, right? Like the spiritual awakening, that's just one part of the journey that serves as a launching pad to continue to improve that relationship with God and to keep it going. And that part is daily grind stuff. That's coming back down the mountain. That's dealing with some people who are difficult. That's figuring out how to be in relationship with one another. That's making our amends and realizing when we are wrong or have wronged someone. That's just the part that keeps going. And then the last part, the 12th step, is that once we've had this spiritual awakening, we're committed. Because we've had the spiritual awakening, we're committed to sharing this message with others and practicing these principles in all of our affairs. And I think that it's so important to recognize, I don't want to call it work, because I think it can feel like work if we're not being real open-hearted about it. But to recognize that when we are blessed with a spiritual awakening, there's some follow-up. And the way to set ourselves up for another spiritual awakening is to make sure that we're staying connected. And part of that is just recognizing that it's not always mountaintop. That I had that experience with my head on the cross, and it changed me. Like, it truly changed me. And I have been blessed to have many of those moments in my life. Not too many that were just like that, but a handful of them that have truly been an opportunity to see God in a new way, to see about God's love for me in a new way, and to be changed in my core, to understand my relationship with God with a new way. But if I kind of left that experience up on the mountaintop and then just came back down and went back to my daily life with no follow-up, then we kind of lose that glow that we had from being on the mountain in the first place. So I guess that's kind of what I want to offer you tonight. It's the thing that stays with me about this story of the Transfiguration, that we go through the daily grind, We go through every day. We try to connect with God. Some days it's easier than others. Some days we say our prayers. Some days we forget. Sometimes we try to take a second to breathe. Some days we forget. Some days we connect with one another in Christian community. Sometimes we just feel like we need to stay home in our pajamas. But we keep making the effort, we keep making the effort. And then because we've done that work that's not always exciting, it's not always shiny, it's not always glowy, but we do that work, and then one day when we least expect it, we're on the mountaintop. And we're having an experience of God that absolutely transforms us. And then we come back down. And we commit to sharing the message. And we commit to being that changed person in our daily lives. And we try again. Try to say our prayers again. We try to breathe again. This process of being human, it's just not as easy as one shiny moment on a mountaintop and then done. So I invite you tonight to remember those moments. To remember those moments that have changed you, because once they happen, they can't be taken away. You can lose the glow, but they cannot be taken away. And so anytime you can kind of reignite that fire about what happened to you, when you had that connection. And then just remember that it's okay to come back down from the mountain and to just keep doing what we're doing. There'll be another spiritual awakening. If we keep at this, there will be endless spiritual awakenings. That is the beauty of this relationship we have with God. So to have the glow, and then to come back down from the mountain and share what we've learned, and share who we are, and share this abundant love that we have experienced from God. And just keep going until the next time we're on the mountain. Amen.
Amen.